from your perspective, what do you believe leaders should focus or how to make the shift to automation, to AI that are becoming more common nowadays?
Step one is to take an inventory of everything you have today and get rid of some things. I think we sometimes are good at adding more things to the stack, and there's probably an opportunity in some organizations to retire certain things. They maybe were helpful for a certain point of time, so that we don't overwhelm our teams with so many options.
What do you believe teams should focus to become, let's say, more valuable instead of just faster, more efficient?
Well, it's interesting. I think we can get overwhelmed by all of the ways that we can improve our processes. So it's probably up to each organization to figure out where their pain points are the most. Is it in their marketing efforts on behalf of a customer? Is it in ongoing claims analytics and financial modeling? So it depends on the type of work people are.
Welcome to Inside Delegated Authority. Today's guest is Jenn Walsh. Jenn brings more than 35 years of experience across the insurance ecosystem, beginning her career on the carrier side, evolving into a top producing broker and national practice leader. Now, she serves as an executive advisor and founder of Genuine Shift throughout her career, including senior leadership and partner roles at Woodruff Sawyer. Jenn has built high-performing teams, led large benefits practice, advised boards, and coach producers nationwide. Today, through Genuine Shift and the Client Service Academy, she focuses on something many firms overlook, turning client service professionals and emerging leaders into proactive advisors who drive growth rather than react to the workload. Her clients hire her to lead, let's say, the framework challenges organizations to rethink development, workflow, leadership readiness, and operational alignment, especially in an industry facing talent shortages, battlefield promotions, and mounting pressure to modernize. Jenn brings a rare perspective that spans carrier, broker, executive, and educator. And today we're exploring what really happens when growth outpaces capability, when workflow lags behind ambition, and what it takes to build teams that don't just show up, but lead. Jenn, welcome to Inside Delegated Authority.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. To kick us off, I wanted to ask you a question. When you walk into a high-performance agency or MGA, what do you notice first about how they run client service and operations?
There's clarity that the client service team, the operations professionals are delivering on what they promised in the sales cycle. I think so often what happens is we think of bringing in new business and this other team will keep the client happy, whatever that means, or keep the broker happy. But underneath it, if there isn't a respect for the level of work, the volume of work, there isn't intention around the process. It's a clue that there's a lot of problems going on underneath. So on the other hand, when I come in and there's intention, I can see steps that they've been taking over the last few years to modernize how they work, whether that's the tools, training, et cetera. Those are signals to me that somebody's adapting to be successful in this next era of our business.
Talking about a new era, there has been times that teams, let's say, feel busy versus actually being effective. How do you see this difference play out in what you have seen?
It's such a good question. There's a quote I love: busy is a choice, productive is a skill. And we think about the pace of our business. We're all living and working in a chaotic world, and it is a slippery slope to all of a sudden people managing their day by the pace and volume of their inbox, frankly. And they're pulled into that frenzy. And there's a lost perspective that clients did not hire you, whoever you is, whatever your role is in the business, to do email. Email is a tool. And somewhere along the way, we've gotten lost. And because maybe we're short-staffed or not trained appropriately, or we don't have the resources, there's this frenzy where people are kind of pulled into this swirl and they feel exhausted at the end of the day. They feel overwhelmed that there's still this much to do. And it's not a good feeling to wake up every day feeling like it's completely out of your control how to be productive. So this busyness crisis is what I'll often speak about. How do we pause it? And some people get nervous about that as if we told our teams, our staff not to be so busy, that would mean they take their eye off delivering great results for the client. I actually think it's quite the contrary. We can't deliver great client results when we're constantly in this frenzy.
We're in a frenzy of being busy, but then you have to realize or think what kind of, let's say, pain you want at the end of the day, the pain of actually having to use all your brain power to do something, or then living regret on I should have done this. This one wasn't the best use of my time. What are those hidden bottlenecks that you see that are being let's say, underestimated by leaders?
Honestly, I would say this realization has come to me over the last several years as my role in the ecosystem has changed, as I have worked more closely with account managers, account executives, carrier client service reps, and myself gotten closer to the work that they are asked to do. I think one of the bottlenecks forms because managers, leaders, have lost perspective on how long certain things take. And so the bottlenecks happen because I'm over here as a leader, and I always say in our academies, there are no villains here. I'm very in touch with some of the bad habits our industry has, but rarely are people waking up saying, you know what I want to do? Make Daniel's life more complicated than it needs to be. However, I probably, as a manager, unit leader, office leader, whatever my role is, I don't actually know how long a specific task takes. And so when those things are invisible, these bottlenecks happen and those interfere with great work to clients. They interfere with people's satisfaction with their job, and then for sure interferes with any idea we have about evolving as an industry and using technology at the maximum delivery that it could do for us.
Yeah, and all the companies that I've seen, they want to provide tools for the team. They want to train them. They want to roll out new processes that help them make their life easier. But why do you believe firms struggle to get consistent behavior when these changes happen?
Well, the first question I will ask people when they come to me and they'll say, our team won't do certain things, I'll ask with all love and kindness, well, what behaviors do you reward here? You know, it doesn't matter in my career whether it's trying to get people to use Salesforce or Benefit Point or your new whiz bang contrabulator, whatever it is. It doesn't take people long to figure out that certain employees will opt out for a variety of different reasons and there are no consequences. And so, people, going back to our discussion about this busyness crisis, if I have a million things to do and I've noticed that Tim and Gwen never do any of that, or they don't even go to the training, I mean, am I going to put together whatever my broker needs, the underwriter needs, my client needs, or am I going to invest the hour to go do my required training or get caught up in my processes? So when people have asked me to consult with them on rolling out any number of initiatives, I ask them to really thoughtfully begin with the end in mind. Consider your team. If you already know there are 3 teams that have come into your organization as a result of an acquisition, you already know that they are going to have the ability, the autonomy to opt out, then let's be clear about that. Otherwise, it becomes the elephant in the room and it really interferes. Not to mention, this is a team sport, this business. So it doesn't matter whether you're carrier, broker, whatever your role is, there are very few roles where someone can come in, do their job, and they're not impacted by everybody else. So if I roll out whatever SOP, automation, AI, whatever I'm doing, if I'm an account manager working with 3 different producers and 2 out of the 3 have adopted the best practice, but 1 doesn't, the exhaustion, the context switching, I have to remember, if it's Todd's group, we don't use the new tools. If it's so-and-so, then we do use the submission process with our carrier partners. I'm not suggesting these are easy problems for leaders to solve, but pretending they don't exist is really naive and it's very risky to an organization's growth.
Yeah, I believe it was Charlie Munger who said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome.
That's a great one. I'm going to remember that one.
But we have this, let's say, set of tools being implemented in companies. In your experience, what are the common reasons that these initiatives, let's say CRM, policy admin system, or any other software that people use out there, why do they fail to stick?
Gosh, we probably could break this down into a couple of categories. One, it may look fancy, but it's solving a problem that either the majority of people on the team don't have or they don't understand it. What is the goal here? I remember when I would get non-compliance with putting very basic information into our AMS. When people look at it very siloed, they're like, well, that never benefits me. But what they were missing was the bigger picture. If we don't have these insights into all of our clients, how can we appropriately staff? Right. So they're saying we don't hire enough people, we're short staffed. If we don't share kind of at a macro level what we're trying to solve, I think that's one issue. I mean, the other biggie is not understanding how much time it's going to take to roll something out. I've seen so many people, they get all excited in this initiative, and we have a committee and we're going to have the training. And then there's this gap of how long is it going to take somebody to become proficient with this new tool? How will we know when reached a level of proficiency that she's getting the payoff in terms of the speed? Because sometimes if people short term feel like, well, this is more work, Daniel. Why would I do this? It's just faster to do it myself, right? This pops up, whether it's AI, using an outsourcing partner, BPO like Patra or Resource Pro, whatever. It's just faster to do it myself. People have to get through that next kind of the S curve of learning. And so when we don't have clarity, this will take you 30 days or it will take you 25 times to do this process. And then we expect that you'll then start benefiting. I think that's a big obstacle to adoption as well.
Let's say we bring the people in, give them the training, tell them the benefits, be clear on the timeline. But sometimes I don't know if you have seen or how do you believe it presents that leaders can accidentally create, let's say, a culture where you can work around the system instead of actually leveraging it.
Um, I mean, one aspect, it goes back to a previous comment of, what behaviors are rewarded. The other is that on many teams, the truth tellers, the people who are raising their hand and pointing out very real obstacles to implementation, very real questions about process and trade offs. If, Daniel, I'm going to do this, does that mean I stop doing this or do I do both concurrently? I'm empathetic to leaders because they've often spent 6 months, a year, 2 years. They've identified the problem, they've vetted a solution, they got the budget, they finally got the rollout. And then when the team starts asking questions, there's a bit of a reaction like, don't be negative. You're not on board. Get with the program. And when we do that, what we tell people is that we actually don't want your feedback. And so then people just start working around the system. When they first, they have the spirit of wanting to help, but that can happen very quickly. That can happen quickly, and it can undermine millions of dollars of investment, hard and soft dollars.
Then the other side of the situation, and let's say the company says, my team works really well. I don't need to implement the new system. What have you seen as a downstream cost when teams rely on email, spreadsheets, tribal knowledge as their actual operating model?
But the tribal knowledge is a super interesting one to me when I think about the legacy way most of us learned the business. Whether you were a carrier rep or a baby broker or an underwriter, you were sitting in a cube next to somebody and you overheard them. You participated in the side chatter and conversations, and that filled a lot of the knowledge gaps. With hybrid, remote first work, the different ways we're working today, it makes this knowledge gap even more acute. People in our industry may be good technically. That doesn't mean they are effective trainers. I think we know this in the sales leadership. We'll say, hey, just because somebody's your top producer doesn't mean they'll be your best sales manager. That exists in client service and operations as well. Just because Jane is a great account executive or an underwriter doesn't mean that they are well equipped to train a variety of different learners. That's a skill in and of itself. When people keep their spreadsheets, keep their side processes, it becomes impossible to have other people step in and take over their process. It becomes very disruptive for the clients. I think the client gets lost in a lot of this. We end up rushing. Client gets work that's not peer reviewed. The client gets work that it may be a lot of options, but I would argue that maybe not a lot of thought went into what we're going to talk about, right? Because we're so busy and frantic and trying to put things together, the work product does not end up as good. And then going back to where the bottlenecks are, when people kind of hoard their own little processes, this becomes very difficult for leaders to address a problem because there's no visibility to what the real issues are. I could go on and on that topic. I love that question.
No, I appreciate the insight. And then you touch a point like leaders, as the bigger the organization gets, leaders think that service is strong. They're doing the right things. Everything's working incredibly well alongside the client experience. But how do you feel that operational chaos shows up when you are, let's say, a couple degrees away from the front line?
I think as an industry, we would be well served to get honest that some of our retention numbers are more a reflection of customers like inertia, their unwillingness to make a decision. Not like our high retention rate is not necessarily a signal that we are so great. Our industry has rewarded mediocrity for a really long time. And it's just an honest look. And what happens when we get this false sense of security, like, well, everything seems to be fine, they don't realize how many problems are sneaking out the door, the inconsistencies, this frenzy and last minute work that starts to happen is also for the newest generation coming into the insurance business. They're looking at their more senior partners and they're like, I don't want his job. He looks miserable. I don't know if you've seen this, Daniel, but it's like you could be a baby underwriter, a baby broker, whoever. They're like it used to be, I want to be promoted. I want more autonomy. I want more authority. I want more money. There are more and more people saying to me, like, I don't know if I want that job because that person is so stressed out. And so I think this is where there's other problems that are harder to quantify that just shine this light on how important it is to get our arms around our SOPs, right? Figure out what to stop doing, then figure out what to automate, then figure out how we can maximize AI, how to get everybody moving forward because the consequence is just too great if we don't.
And you add up a talent shortage, not a lot of people wanting to get into insurance. And then you have this guidance that everybody talks about accountability, agency, be there, be mindful. But then some people start to feel it as punishment, micromanagement. How do you believe leaders should think about this accountability agency and not turn it into punishment or micromanagement?
It's interesting. When I work with account managers and account executives, often I'm encouraging them to get rid of this myth that just because the producer said something once, I have to keep doing that. The producer's probably much more open to you going to them and saying, hey, here's what I've spotted. Are we open to trying this or this strategy with the customer? Usually the person is relieved. It's like our best salespeople in my experience, the best salespeople didn't mind being managed because they wanted to win more than they minded an honest look at their pipeline. And I believe it's the same in client service. We've reached a point in operations and everybody who does the work that we're selling that there's this level of exhaustion and fatigue that the time is right, whether it's our more experienced veterans, our up and comers, or the brand new people, to give them more structure and scaffolding. And it's not viewed as micromanagement. It's more viewed as a necessary skill to be successful in your role as a knowledge worker in this era, which knows where we are.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the question that some people have is how do you build those capabilities, those skill sets, that toolkit, so the people that are coming or that are already established can benefit from and actually develop what the industry requires right now?
It's interesting. I think part would be to look at your more experienced people and acknowledge that getting the information out of their head and into a process is a valuable contribution like that they are helping towards growth by doing that profitable growth, not and recognizing how much time that takes. Because often what happens is that we take somebody who already has a lot of direct reports, they're already managing a book of business, and then we're saying, and Daniel, when you get a moment, document your process so that then the whole business can benefit. And I think that is, we just can't ignore the time that it takes people to do that. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were looking for, but I worry a lot about our more experienced talent that we are pulling a whole lot of different directions. And we do not want them retiring too early or punching out. We need them and their wisdom and guidance. And it's key to any of these initiatives.
And then we have two types of talent that would need to be developed. The, let's say, newer team members and the established ones. Where do you feel that the struggle is to ramp as fast as possible, even with world-class training inside companies?
I think with our veterans, and this will vary greatly amongst organizations. So this is a general statement. In many organizations, the veterans do feel burned by whatever they've seen in the industry or within that organization, back to this, what behaviors are rewarded. So you have to be very specific. I get why you might think that this is just one of those initiatives to nowhere. But for us to grow and be competitive in this next era, this is going to be different. And then you need to follow through. For the newest people, they lack context for our business. So a trap we sometimes fall into, it's like, okay, Daniel, take this from this and this from that and put it in this spreadsheet and then send it to so-and-so. And we've like just dropped them in and they don't really understand this ecosystem of carriers and wholesalers and agents and who's responsible for what. And a growing number of newer professionals aren't that comfortable with having conversations. They just want to do an email or a Slack. So, it's a lot. For the middle group, we are promoting at a faster rate than we did historically. And some of them are not quite ready for the next job, but they were the next person available, right? So I'll say battlefield promotions, which my dad used to say, opportunity has no conscience. So maybe if the time is right and they're a great employee, that makes sense. But we can't pretend that they have the tools and the experience to deliver at that level, right? So we have to put some scaffolding around them.
Totally. And with those battlefield promotions, what risks do you believe are being created for, let's say, quality and consistency?
Well, we're holding them out to our customers as individuals with a certain level of professional maturity that they don't have. And, when we get honest about it, it's like, well, are we just pretending here? Or where's that work going to get done? We're making promises in a sales cycle, a sales process. Then one of two mistakes go out the door. We have somebody who is really stressed out in this new position. We have gaps being filled by more senior people who are actually doing that more complex work behind the scenes, right? They're doing training. They're basically training these newer people and they're not getting compensated for it. So there are all sorts of issues that come up. And most of the problems are self-inflicted wounds. If we just acknowledged that it's not a personal, we're not saying the person's not a good fit, that they can't get there. But if we don't have a plan, these are complex business problems we're asking people to solve.
And we ask them to solve bigger and harder problems. Then we have to train them. Then we leverage technology, which the premise is to free up capacity, give them more, be more productive. What do you believe teams should focus to become, let's say, more valuable instead of just faster, more efficient?
Well, it's interesting. I think we can get overwhelmed by all all of the ways that we can improve our processes. So it's probably up to each organization to figure out where their pain points are the most. Is it in their marketing efforts on behalf of a customer? Is it in ongoing claims analytics and financial modeling? So it depends on the type of work people are committing to doing. I would pick the most prevalent segment and the process that people are leaning on the most. And then that's where we have to get committed to having that process. I mean, when I think about AI, if somebody doesn't know a question to ask or what process to leverage? Did anything even really help them? It's kind of an overwhelming time. It's also an exciting time. There are so many opportunities ahead if we can be intentional to be able to go further faster. But as a team, if we can't articulate what the process is or hold people accountable, I fear some teams will really be left behind.
Yeah, no, nobody wants to be left behind, but you have more tools coming out, more products being released in a shorter period of time. From your perspective, what do you believe leaders should focus or how to make the shift to automation, to AI that are becoming more and more common nowadays?
Step one is to take an inventory of everything you have today and get rid of some things. I think we sometimes are good at adding more things to the stack, and there's probably an opportunity in some organizations to retire certain things. They maybe were helpful for a certain point of time, so that we don't overwhelm our teams with so many options. The other opportunity would be to think about things being incremental or phased. I've seen many times in our business where leaders are like, okay, we got Daniel's AI tool, we're going to put it in there. And then now that'll surely just solve all those problems. And then now we're on to the next thing without realizing that any solution, especially when we're talking about AI that's going to continue to change, we need to have a cadence of hitting certain milestones, whether that's adoption or expanding what the tool can do. So I think that's a big piece of it too, is how will we know if this is successful in 3 months or 6 months? Often people default to if everybody's not complaining about it, then it's good. It's like, I think we can do better than that and really analyze which team members are actually using this and celebrate those people for going first and adopting the new technology. I think those are things to build in as well.
Yeah, I will also say insurance is one of the most conservative industries that are out there. And sometimes people rather wait and see who's doing it, who's testing it, who has done it before. Reference me someone that has already worked. Nobody wants to be the first time mover. But sometimes you run out of time. How do you feel how do you believe carriers, MGAs or brokers break when these workflows start to become more inconsistent, data quality starts to be poor, output is not what expected? Like how do you feel those breaks start to surface?
It's an excellent point. Yes, we are conservative. Yes, we move slowly. The talent gap and profit pressures are so acute, however, at this point. I think the pain of not doing something exceeds the pain of either investing in a tool or investing the time or both to get it going. I also think from a talent perspective, people aren't going to want to work for companies that are doing things the hard way. If you have a choice, and some people are I think they're overconfident about their employees, like they'll call it loyalty. I would say that goes both ways though. I have an obligation to make sure that my teams can benefit from the latest technology and resources, and I'm investing in them. Do I want to go to work for an agency or a carrier that's working like it's, 1988? Or do I want to get into the juicy work and be able to benefit from all the things that technology has to offer? I mean, I think it's the latter. That's what I see and hear every day. Now, there aren't as many options yet because, right, we just have our early adopters, but it's coming and it will be as important as pay because pay is tied to workload and work satisfaction. And people don't want to do, work that makes no sense that anybody could do, right? That's not very satisfying. So I think that will be a new way people are attracting candidates at all levels.
And they usually say that when you hear these leaders that have great companies, like it's all about the people. But when you're up and coming, if you want to recruit top talent, it's going to be really tough. How do you believe a company could position themselves to bring that top talent if, let's say, they are up and coming, being from day one, and but also have the ability to, let's say, put a tech stack that it could be appealing?
It's interesting. Almost every agent and broker in the US, possibly outside the US as well, but US, in my experience, puts out there on their website or in their sales collateral or what their producers and salespeople say, our people are our difference. but there's very little evidence to show that they are investing in people as much as they would if the people are the product. And those that really can point to what they're doing to help somebody improve their skills, leverage their skills because the person can focus and think because a lot of the other busy work has gone away and been automated is going to be the real key. Thought of like 3 different things at once. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to let you decide where we go. I get excited thinking about this and what the opportunity is for people who are willing to evolve.
Then what would you say to a person that is willing to evolve and wants to a top talent? How that person can achieve that?
I think for the individual, it's really paying attention to where their contribution is going, not getting hung up in just the busyness. What am I actually held accountable for doing? Being open and creative to try the newer tools, to participate in the feedback loop as things get better, because out in the wild, people using these tools, I mean, this is the only way in your organization you get better. It's the only way my organization gets better when people are actually using what we've built. And yeah, I mean, taking some personal accountability. But at the end of the day, for the majority of staff, there's an outer boundary to what they can control. I mean, they can't want it more than the senior leadership is willing to invest or put things together. And one thing you haven't asked about, I want to put out there. I think there's a risk sometimes with AI and automation. People say, "Oh, this staff, they just do the day to day." The day to day is the tactical steps that are required to deliver on what we have promised. And especially when, as a leader, we're a little bit unclear about what all those steps are. I think sometimes like, oh, well, it's just the day to day. How important would it be to leverage AI in our interactions with carriers or what have you? I mean, critically important so that it's consistent. And then the other trap people fall into is like, well, when we all get busy, like the team, everybody just pitches in here. And first of all, that's never true. Everybody doesn't pitch in. It's usually a few people, and those people are very weary and they don't want to continue to do that. And that's why we've reached this critical point of getting more consistent, automating and leveraging technology where we can. We can't rely on our outdated ways of like the short-term fixes anymore.
If you're, let's say, an MGA owner, a carrier owner, or a broker owner, and you had to choose one differentiator that people can apply that is not the team, which one do you believe could be that option to be differentiated and, let's say, win it all?
It's being really clear on what it is you provide to whom and at what level. Like so many companies in the insurance business actually don't have a consistent scope of service or scope of work with their customers. And when you start with that, we can do anything for anyone at any time. That's the source of a lot of these problems, because then we are doing everything for everyone. So then we try to have a process and train people and automate and use AI, and it becomes impossible. So I think and it's hard because everybody they don't want to say no to new business. So you go to a carrier. Well, who are you a good fit for? A small risk or a big risk? We can do anybody. It's like, well, that, who's your primary target? I think the provocation for most organizations say, where's our 70%, our 80%? Get very committed and clear, and then think about how we're going to optimize that segment. And so I think that's how I would prioritize, because you're not going to do a big automation and AI initiatives for like the one-off business you probably shouldn't be doing anyway. That's easier said than done in some organizations. They don't want to say no to anything. So they say yes to everything, and then it becomes very difficult.
The riches are in the niches, as they say.
Exactly.
Really enjoyed our time here, Jen. Appreciate everything you shared. This was Inside Delegated Authority with Jenn Walsh. Thank you very much. This is your host, Daniel, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.